Hello, travelers. Welcome to this episode of Quick Car Cuts, where we see a movie in the theater and then discuss it in the car right afterwards. Hence, the car. And the shadiest spot I could find so that my camera doesn't shut down. So we'll see how far I get into this. I'm Britt, and there's no Tiff with me today, but today I saw Insidious, The Red Door. Now, to address the elephant in the room, or I guess lack thereof, I don't know where Tiffany is. We were supposed to meet up to see this movie today. We were supposed to meet at the theater, and she just never showed up. So I can only assume she ended up at another theater, wherever she went. I hope she had a good time. I had a pretty good time. Other than the people talking in the back of the theater, I think there needs to be some discussion on theater etiquette, because I swear to God, these people could not stop talking throughout the whole movie. I kind of gave them the benefit of the doubt when they were trying to find their seats, but it continued for some time. Anyway, a little bit of background on my relationship with Insidious. I think this might be a bit of a hot take on the internet. I did not like the first Insidious. I saw it when it first came out in theaters. My mom and my brother were on some field trip, band trip thing, and my mom was chaperoning for them. And my dad was like, well, let's go see a movie. Why don't you pick something? And I was like, well, Insidious looks really good. I've been seeing trailers for that. Let's go see it. And when we left the movie theater, my dad looked at me and said, you're not allowed to pick the movies anymore. And my dad's a big horror fan too. That's where I get it from. So ever since then, every time I heard someone talk about how much they love the movie, I just couldn't get behind it. Which is really funny, considering the fact that I'm pretty sure I like Malignant, another one of James Wan's movies, which is also kind of bonkers, arguably more bonkers. So all this time I've been wondering, why am I okay with Malignant? And I'm still kind of on the fence about that. I should watch Malignant again and make sure. Pretty sure I like it though. Why am I on board with Malignant but not with Insidious? So I'm like, maybe I should just go back and watch it and give it another chance. And so with The Red Door coming up this weekend, I decided to rewatch the first Insidious and to watch Chapter 2. So continuing on that a little bit, I enjoyed it more as a more mature film goer, because I could see stuff that I really liked in it, and this isn't going to be a dissection of Insidious, but just before someone burns me at the stake for not liking Insidious, I've kind of come around on it. I'd give it another watch with friends and see how I feel. I liked Insidious Part 2 better, but I have a hard time determining if it's because it's the first time I've seen it and I wasn't trying to get rid of memories from being a teenager watching this movie for the first time. I did not watch 3 or The Last Key. From what I could tell on the internet, those are kind of prequels, and I didn't have time. I didn't have time to watch them. I do intend to watch them at some point, but they didn't seem like necessary viewing for this. And in my experience, I was correct. It's not necessary viewing to understand what's going on, because this movie picks up with the Lamberts almost exactly where we left them on Chapter 2. So if you're wondering if you should watch the other movies before you watch this one, I would at least get an understanding of what happens in the first 2 movies, because it continues that family storyline directly. So let's jump into that a little bit. First things first, one thing that absolutely irked me so badly about the first Insidious movie was the squealing, violins and the sound cues that just felt really over the top to me, and they didn't create any sort of dread for me. I know the violins and the score is iconic now, but they didn't do that for me. They just irritated me. And then when you pair that with the big title card, I remember distinctly, like, turning to my dad and laughing when that title card came up in the theater. So, I'm just happy to say that a lot of that seems to be subdued. This is a jump scare heavy movie, but I don't know how I feel about everything leading up to it. So you'll have complete silence except for the noise in the area. So, like, people shuffling or their hands touching things. So I can never remember these words when I want to remember them. I'll put it up here now if I remember it. But that music, there's a lot of that. And then you'll get the scare and then the big orchestra hit. And I have never personally been a fan of those kinds of jump scares. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know if I'm a big fan of a lot of jump scares, mostly because I like to keep my ears intact. So it might be a theater thing, might be personal preference, but just so you know, there's a lot of jump scares in this movie that are quite jump scary. Overall, I don't think they overdid it, though, in terms of jump scares. We also have a lot of returning actors for this one, which is really cool. The kids from the first two parts come back and play their teenage counterparts, with our oldest boy, who was the subject of the first two movies, another astral projector, or traveler, as they like to be called, I guess. Going off to college, we found out there's been a divorce, there's a rift between the boys, and if there's one thing I like in my sequel horror movies, it's repercussions. I love to see what's happened after the events of the other movies. And there's not just, like, I love to see repercussions of actions in the next movie. And I like it when things aren't hand-waved away. So it's not thrown at us right away what's going on, what's led to this rift between Patrick Wilson and the boys and his ex-wife now. And, seeing Patrick Wilson, didn't know he directed this until I was watching the credits. That's really cool. So it might explain why we have a more subdued kind of creative vision, I should say. We're in James Wan's world, but this is not necessarily the James Wan style, in my opinion. And I like James Wan. I like a lot of his stuff. Even if some of it's kind of out there for me, we really need to have risk takers out there. As an aside, don't mistake my dislike for some of the stuff in Insidious as me saying it's a terrible movie. I am not here to yuck anyone else's yum by any means. Because, again, we need risk takers in movie making, or we're not going to get any cool new creative things. So, with all that in mind, if you liked the other Insidious movies, I think you'll like this one. And you didn't need my recommendation to go see it. You've already seen it. But yes, he's directed this movie. And what we have is kind of more of a psychological exploration of both our dad Josh and our son Dalton in the wake of what's happened in the last two movies, where they underwent hypnosis to forget about what happened and to forget that they could astral project, most importantly. So there's a lot of uncovering of things, a lot of good tension, I would say. I felt a lot of tension in the characters as discoveries were being made, because trying to keep this spoiler free for a little bit. And I thought that the climax was satisfying. The ending was satisfying for me. So let's go into some spoiler territory here. This is your warning. If you'd like to see my thoughts on the rest of the movie, spoiler free, please go to this time code. 3, 2, one. I love our ending here, where we get some peace. Because at least for the first two Insidious movies that I've seen, we've kind of had this shocker, fake out ending. That, how do I explain it? It feels like kind of a cliffhanger of sorts, and it's like a one last gut punch. So I feel that seeing the first two movies gives you a little bit more connection with the family and the stakes in this one, because you've already known everything they've gone through. And I was much more invested in seeing Dalton and Josh reconnect and rebuild their relationship, not just through the truth coming out about everyone remembering what's happened, everyone remembering what's painful, but to kind of, because that's a trope that I've always hated in books and movies, is the doing something for someone else's own good. And in this movie, we found out that over time, Renee, I think that's her name, Renee, Josh's wife, just couldn't handle having to lie to the kids all the time, because they had some sort of memory of what had happened at the end of the second movie, and just telling them, no, it's a bad dream, whatever. And then between that and Josh getting foggy, she just had to distance herself and divorce. And I've always hated that trope of lying to people to protect them, because in my personal life, I'm a firm believer in that the truth might hurt, but you're owed the truth. And that is how we are all on a level playing field, and we can all make decisions going forward about what is best for everyone. So to see all of that finally come out in like the final act of this movie was really nice. Everyone remembers everything. Dalton says it himself. No, we have to remember these things even if they're painful, because that's how we, that's how we heal and move on. And there's an air of hope at the end of this movie that I really enjoy. Even to the credits music, which was really sweet. It felt like an ending to the story, like a final ending for Insidious, and I liked it. Of course, there's stuff around the internet about a post-credits scene, which is your, standard cliffhanger, like, ooh, the evil's not really gone. But they don't have to commit to making another movie if they don't want to, or if this one doesn't do well. Not worth sticking around for, in my opinion. But, you hear about it and you stick around and see it. I just realized I had an icy. Let's cut back to some general ratings, shall we? So, welcome back if you skipped the spoiler talk. Overall, I would give this movie 4 out of 5 red doors. Now, why would I do that? As a person who said I did not like the previous Insidious movie, I'd say a lot of the stuff I didn't like was toned down, but it still felt a lot like an Insidious movie, I think, in my opinion. It felt a lot like what the first two have felt like for me, which was super fantastical, a little batshit. But this one, I think, rounded out the edges for me nicely. And I think it might be partially because it was balanced well with the family drama. Which is something I like to see, as well as like repercussions of previous movies being visible. Also, there is a post-credits scene, just to let you know if you decide to go see this. And yeah, that's my opinion on Insidious, The Red Door. I am gonna get out of here before I melt. So, stay safe, don't travel too far, and walk with a steady stride.